I'm your host, John Tobacco. I've been walking these streets through the caverns of Wall Street, pounding the pavement for 25 years. This is Federal Hall. The capital of capitalism is right behind me. This is where the politics meets the economy, and we're gonna bring it all to you here on What's the Deal. We're bringing you real experts with real understanding, not talking heads, not guys who manage their mommy and daddy's money. Dan Viola is the founder of the Blockchain Shift Conference. We'll be the only show on television that every week has one whole segment based on cryptocurrency.
We want to create one single platform for trading for Latin America.
Saudi Arabia has purchased American policymaking.
Lumbering giant. They were that blockbuster that just didn't evolve with the times.
What's the deal?
Free donuts for everyone.
Great!
What's the deal? Welcome to this week's edition of What's the Deal? I'm your host, John Tobacco. What's the Deal is the alternative NFL programming just for you right here, only on Newsmax TV. Let's get right into it. This week we have another esteemed panel of diversified political thought. Joining me this week on What's the Deal, Morgan Peckma, political analyst for Pix 11 right here in New York, and the director of the film Get Me Roger Stone, which was fantastic, and I watched it multiple times, and Dr. Melissa Jane Kronfeld, the founder of Passion for a Purpose and vice president of Charity, and fantastic candidate for New York City Council. MJ is a Republican, never Trumper.
Yes.
Known well here in New York City as a very rebellious city council candidate. And, of course, my intrepid executive producer, reporter, writer, everything, Frankie Morano, joins us as usual.
Good morning, John. Oh, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I tell you, you're anti-NFL after the Packers failed to cover the spread last weekend. I am $110 richer thanks to my football pool, so I am very pro-NFL right now.
Okay, well, you can be pro-NFL on the morning after, but on Sundays at 1, you're right here on What's the Deal. We're going to cover a bunch of topics today. One I think is right on top of the news that is right about what we're talking about every week on What's the Deal, where business intersects with politics. Probably the biggest news on the globe the last couple of weeks is the kidnap and alleged murder of Khashoggi, who is a Washington Post reporter, a Saudi Arabian citizen but a U.S. resident. The king is in denial. Trump is saying he's trying to get to the bottom of it. But there's also $110 billion worth of weapons contracts for Lockheed Martin and other U.S. companies. And this is right where business intersects with politics, because Trump's got to play a level hand here. MJ, what do you think about this and what he can do?
Well, first of all, I think that we should place a tiny bit less emphasis on this arms deal. I mean, arms are the number one business in the entire world. It's the largest economy in the world. And we are, there's always going to be wars, and the business of war is the biggest business that there is. So at the end of the day, there's always going to be somebody else who needs to buy weapons. And so that $110 billion, I think, is a blip on the map when you think about arms deals around the world now in the next year, in the next 5 years, in the next 10 years. I think that it would be responsible of the United States to stand up against human rights abuses. Granted, as the president has said, this man was not a U.S. citizen, but he was a U.S. resident. And even if he wasn't, and Morgan, I would hope you agree with me, as a recovering journalist for the New York Post myself, journalists should be protected the same way diplomats are protected around the world. These are individuals that we rely on to tell us the truth. Maybe sometimes it's a biased truth, but at least it's the truth. And if we can't travel around the world to report on issues, we rely on journalists to do the same, and it's a responsibility of every freedom-loving democracy anywhere in the world to protect these individuals. So I think that the president is really wrong on this, and I think that if reports are true that the Saudi Arabian government is going to come out and say that it was a botched kidnapping, I would say, well, then be careful when you get kidnapped by the Saudis if you want to make it out alive.
Morgan, we just got MJ at the last minute today, but it seems like she was quite prepared for that topic. But is $110 billion to the U.S. economy a blip?
I First of all, I really agree with what MJ was saying, both about the fact that there is an unlimited well for weapons contracts and also about the importance of protecting journalists. But I think that this has also exposed a larger problem with this uncomfortable relationship the United States has with Saudi Arabia. You know, Donald Trump wrote in his 2015 book, Time to Get Tough, that Saudi Arabia was the world's biggest funder of terrorism. The Obama administration essentially said something very comparable with Hillary Clinton as Secretary of State. There was a time that we were tethered to Saudi Arabia because of our dependence on Middle East oil. Because of fracking, now America is largely energy independent. We don't need to be beholden to Saudi Arabia anymore. But the problem is that the ultra wealthy, both Democrats and Republicans in the United States, want to feed at the trough of the Saudi royal family. And so we maintain this really unconscionable relationship with a country that either sponsors or enables terrorism, that commits horrendous human rights abuses. Recently, a person was crucified in Riyadh by the Saudi government, and it just becomes it's unconscionable for us to do business with Saudi Arabia and to just look the other way about everything they do.
Understood. Valid point.
I have a difficult time disagreeing with either of them on what they said. You talk about Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is an international bad actor, among the worst on the globe, right? So not only do they do things like this all the time to people in their own country, it's a country that executes people for sorcery, right? If you want to know what ISIS would look like if it was a country, it would look exactly like Saudi Arabia. Women could not drive there until 6 months ago. They didn't have movie theaters that women could go to in the open until 4 months ago. This is an international human rights abuser par excellence. And I think the bigger question to me, John, right, is we've known all about this, right? Democrats, Republicans knew about it. When they tried their darndest to keep those 28 pages hidden in the 9/11 report and to keep the victims of terrorism from suing the Saudis, and bipartisan, Republican and Democrats said, no, you can't do that. And President Obama, to his discredit, vetoed the attempt to take away sovereign immunity. We knew all about this.
Yes.
But John, why is it that whomever the president is, Bush, Clinton, Obama, Bush, Trump, they always do the same thing? They rail against them at the campaign trail, and then as soon as they're in office, they literally go and kiss and hold hands with the Saudi king and the crown prince. Saudi Arabia has purchased American policy making. You want to know why every time Vladimir Putin does something that's bad, pundits, politicians, and experts all line up to call him a thug, but no one ever does that with Saudi Arabia. One last point I'll make, though, John, is, right, the Philippines. Duterte has approved the extrajudicial killing of drug dealers there, right? They're still an ally. Turkey, they're a NATO ally that we are treaty bound to aid in their defense if they're attacked. We know what Erdogan is doing, not just to journalists, but to a whole bunch of dissidents. China, we can go down, whether you're the head of Interpol or you have the misfortune of being a Catholic that wants to worship freely in China, we know how they deal with you in China. Egypt, General al-Sisi, he came to power by overthrowing an elected government in a coup. Ukraine, they did the same thing, a coup that overturned an elected government. Those are all our allies. So if we're going to do this, if we're going to say sanctions if you're a poor human rights abuser, then I think there's a long list of countries that we are going to have to stop dealing with. I don't know the solution, to be honest.
If you're working for Lockheed Martin, Boeing, any companies in the military industrial complex, start looking for another job, because you may be unemployed soon, because Frank wants to disqualify almost every country on earth that may buy weapons from us.
And I'll also raise the question, we know what Iran does, and we know what Saudi Arabia does. If Iran had hundreds of billions of dollars to spend on American military contracts, would our government be a little bit more friendly to them? I wonder.
Yeah, well...
Well, given that your show's on business, might I interject just a tiny bit? I think this speaks to a larger issue about the diversification of our economy and preparing the next generation of Americans for jobs that we need and jobs that we should have and jobs that the world needs, broadly defined. So we can choose to be a country that employs millions of people in the defense industry and be the country that sells weapons to bad guys, or perhaps maybe we can, in addition to that, prepare a workforce for a generation that is highly connected, that is mobile, that is prepared to take on the service industry in larger ways. And, so that's something that we're missing in this conversation. So beyond the jobs that may or may not be lost, as Morgan pointed out, we don't really know whether it's pre-existing jobs or jobs exported overseas. Why don't we focus on diversifying what the job market looks like in today's day and age so that we don't have to worry about canceling a defense contract with a terrorist state that has a place in its capital called Chop Chop Square, because so many people are beheaded every day.
Okay. Well, the jobs you are looking for may very well be at Amazon, because Amazon is quickly becoming the world's greatest monopoly of all time. Brick and mortar companies are falling by the wayside left and right. Coming up right after this, we're going to take on the topic of Amazon versus the world. Frankie's done a little investigative work on that as well. You're watching What's the Deal on Newsmax TV. Coming up next, Amazon versus the world.
Pink today. What does that mean? The topic is
October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and pink represents that. Thanks, Frankie. Excellent. Hey, welcome back. You're watching What's the Deal on Newsmax TV. It's the alternative NFL programming. We had a spirited discussion in our last segment on Saudi Arabia and the alleged killing, and MJ was quite upset with me for using the word alleged, but that's where it stands today. And allegedly, by most pundits and experts, Amazon is quickly becoming a global behemoth. And left and right, mom and pop stores are either getting on the digital train and selling through Amazon, or brick and mortar is slowly going the way of the steam engine. And, I think Amazon's reach at this point is way too big. And just, last year, Toys R Us was gone. That's an American staple. Every kid wants to go to Toys R Us right before Christmas and point to things that Santa will bring them. And now, you got to go on Amazon, I guess, and point to things. And kids are doing home shopping at 5, I guess. And now, just this week, it's announced that Eddie Lampert is put Sears into bankruptcy. And, that's another stalwart of Americana, Sears. These things are going by the wayside. What are your thoughts, guys, MJ, on Amazon and what it's doing to the traditional economy?
Well, I think the Sears story in and of itself is an important lesson for Amazon, too. You just made an excellent point. Amazon's reach is huge. It's epic. We've never seen anything like that. But even the greats fall, and we know this. Nothing lasts forever. Relationships don't last forever. Sears don't last forever. Amazon may not last forever. I often wonder how, being a Prime member, they're able to ship me things completely for free within 24 hours, no matter what I want anywhere in the world. There is a caveat somewhere, and we just haven't found it yet, or Jeff Bezos hasn't hit that yet. But growth does have, an end point. You can't just grow forever. The Roman Empire didn't last forever, and, Amazon will hit that point. Whether or not, Jeff Bezos, who's incredibly brilliant, will be able to evolve and change when those things happen is a completely different story, and we can't judge that now. But the story of Sears tells the story of what Amazon could be one day.
We should have a little graphic, like a little animation of Jeff Bezos with the Julius Caesar outfit on. But no, he is quickly becoming that, and now you see his reach is, he's buying media outlets like the Washington Post. Amazon is nearing $1 trillion, trading about $910 billion in market cap, so they're bigger than most countries.
His offer to give $2 billion in philanthropy, is also part and
what do you
parcel
think,
of that.
Morgan? One of the things that he did recently was agreed that he was going to pay all his workers a higher rate.
I think certainly that's admirable. I mean, Amazon certainly has the money to pay folks better. I'm concerned about any company that gets too big. I think that's always a threat to the economy. I think it's a threat to competition. That being said, going back to Sears Roebuck catalog, which innovated the way that we buy things in this country, transformed our consumerism habits, Sears Roebuck was on the cutting edge. They changed the market. Look, Amazon is incredibly brilliant at logistics. They just transformed the way that we receive things. They've been on the cutting edge in all these businesses. They've won because, yes, they have had monopolistic practices, no doubt about it, but they've also given the consumer what we want. And so, yes, I mean, I see a lot of things about Amazon that I don't like, that I think are bad for the economy writ large, but I also see that they have given us what we want as consumers, and that's why they've been so wildly successful.
Yeah, isn't that a little bit, to me, a little bit sadly, isn't that like what's kind of making us this instant gratification society? Like when we were kids, you would go to Toys R Us and walk around and maybe get like one small thing, and then if you were good, in 2 weeks we'll come back and get that thing, and if you're really good, then Santa will bring you that thing. And now it's like, I want a participation trophy for playing Little League Baseball. Even if my team lost every single game, I want a trophy. And I want those sneakers on Amazon, Mom, those Yeezys. I want them tomorrow at my front door.
I think the question about instant gratification is a larger societal one, but they killed all these mom and pop toy stores, right? And now we have all chain stores. But it's a different thing when you're talking about Amazon versus a Toys R Us, because Toys R Us was that lumbering giant. They were that blockbuster that just didn't evolve with the times. Amazon is consistently on the cutting edge. They're even trying to send people into space. That's weird, but you understand why they've been successful.
One thing that I wanted to point out, everyone, I kind of see through some of these capitalistic maneuvers, and Jeff Bezos is an amazing businessman. He just came out and all of a sudden he was paying the lowest living wage of any company for years, and he was not collecting state income tax. So he was pocketing all that money by having a lower price, and he's paying his employees on average the lowest of all his peers. Just came out and said he's going to pay everyone $15 an hour, and everyone's like, whoa, what a philanthropist he is. If you really look at what he's doing, he's forcing his online competitors like Etsy, like Overstock, and all of these other companies that are kind of small, like around him. He's putting the pressure on them now because he's got all the money. So he pays his employees more. How do his online competition keep up with him, especially for keeping talent? So he's really, if you ask me, he's raising wages to squash out his next rung of competition, because they either have to pay their people more or he's going to poach the best ones.
I think it's such a good point, John. And also, more and more of the jobs at Amazon have been replaced. They've replaced humans with robots.
Yep.
So, and a lot of the Amazon workers say that because they're also doing away with the bonus structure here, some of them are actually not necessarily even coming out ahead. But the point with Amazon, I shop at Amazon. Amazon.
So do I.
It's an amazing service.
Yes.
You could just think of something and it's there. But the problem with Amazon, right, is if you paid $1 in taxes last year, you paid more to the Uncle Sam than Amazon did in all of 2017.
That's right.
They paid $0 in taxes last year. Now, I don't blame Amazon for trying to reduce its tax liability. I blame the writers of the tax code for allowing all these loopholes for a company like Amazon. But since the Great Recession, they've paid only, the biggest company in the world, you announced the market cap earlier, close to it, $1.4 billion in corporate taxes. Now, you compare that to Walmart, which has paid in that same time $64 billion, and Walmart is not exactly considered a model of being a good corporate citizen. The problem is that Amazon is so dominant in so many other areas beyond publishing, beyond the media, even going into supermarkets now. I think Amazon is clearly a monopoly. It needs to be broken up. If Microsoft was a monopoly in 1998...
I think if the Washington Post keeps pressing on Trump, because he knows Bezos owns it, I think Trump might start looking at some antitrust stuff, because the Washington Post was a floundering, lose money operation, respected in their field, but it was floundering like many other print media companies. And now Bezos, he's so rich just to have the platform, beware the man who buys his ink in barrels. And Bezos is, like you said, he's also behind a lot of these think tanks out there that are influencing tax policy and other policy. You're watching What's the Deal on Newsmax TV. Coming up right after this, the Token Tank with a panel of experts and a bunch of innovative and entrepreneurial companies that we ran into and got some time with down at the Blockchain Shift Conference in Miami. We'll be back right after this.
The IDF, the tough soldiers.
IDF, that's what I do. You tell me that?
No, I don't.
I'm trained by the Israeli Defense Force. I'm a chief. Krav Maga, I'm a VIP Krav Maga bodyguard. I'm trained by the IDF. I swear to you, Joe. There's so many body. Gun, knife, bat, home invasion, car hijacking. Joe, I got more moves than you won't. I'm convinced the class is just to learn how to say all those things you can do really fast.
Right. Say it really
and then
fast so it
believe
sounds
you.
like
Well, he must be able to do
Yeah,
it.
Welcome back. You're watching What's the Deal on Newsmax TV. We are at the Blockchain Shift Conference in the Manor Wynwood Convention Center in Miami. And we're lucky enough today to get a few minutes with Dan Nisanoff. Dan, thanks for joining us here on What's the Deal. And our segment every week during What's the Deal is called a Token Tank, where we talk to companies that are doing security token offerings and kind of break them down, see what they're about, and try to educate our audience. You are the CEO and founder of the Crown League, which is a fantasy sports gaming company. I know a little bit about it, but why don't you tell our audience a little bit about Crown League and what you guys are up to?
Sure. So the Crown League is the first professional fantasy football league in the country. It'll be run by professionals, owned by the public, and run entirely on the blockchain. So what does that mean? We're essentially institutionalizing professional fantasy football in the same way that esports institutionalized professional video gaming. And we're building a national league. We're hiring GMs for each team, experts in the space, names you'll recognize out of the NFL, out of fantasy, out of sports media. The franchises will be located in key geographic regions in the U.S., staffed by high-profile GMs and a front office. You'll be able to buy a stake in a team, own a piece of a real national professional fantasy football team.
Wow. So you guys are doing a security token offering?
We're doing 13 of them. So each team is a legal entity. Its equity is represented by a security token. So instead of buying a share of stock, you're buying a securitized token that gives you the same rights.
So you're essentially the owner of a professional fantasy football team.
You're an owner of a franchise.
It's like the Green Bay Packers sell fractional ownership of the team.
Right.
When you buy a seat, you get a piece of the team, and
right. Except the Green Bay Packers, when you buy a share of their stock, it's wallpaper.
Yeah.
It has no rights, no income.
Right.
With us, you actually share in the profits of the team. You're an owner. You get a vote on critical matters relating to the team. You get a vote on who you want to run it. You get a vote on trades, drafts, starting lineups, all this stuff. And the consensus of the ownership group is published to the GM.
Wow.
Let me share with you the biggest thing about this league. We're launching a media company that will provide real-time commentary from a professional sportscasting booth, a studio with real sportscasters in real time, pregame, game day, postgame. So you're watching Red Zone or you're watching your favorite games, and you actually can watch your teams and hear commentary in real time about your team and your league.
How much you guys raising?
Almost $100 million.
Almost $100 million.
Yeah.
What phase of the raise process are you in right
so
now?
we've done 2 equity rounds where we've raised early stage capital from high profile VCs and high net worth individuals, lots of them associated with professional sports. We raised $6 million. We're about to do 12 equity offerings for the teams. Each team will sell for $5 million. So that's $60 million in the aggregate. And then we'll be selling a $30 million slug of equity in the league itself.
For more information on the token offering and the Professional Fantasy League, go to www.thecrownleague.com. Dan Nisanoff, thank you for giving us a few minutes here in the Token Tank. You're watching What's the Deal on Newsmax TV, and we'll be back right after this. Hello, welcome back. Continuing coverage on the Token Tank. Again, I have my esteemed panelists with me, Neelam Brar, and of course, our regular man, Our crypto dummy Frank Morano joins us as well. I'll tell you, we were down in Miami, Neelam, and it was a beautiful conference that Dan put together. I thought it was done well. I don't know what you thought about it.
Yeah, it's interesting when you do conferences or attend conferences in different parts of the world, you tend to see a window into a region. And one of the things that was cool about Miami was you were seeing a lot of South American and Caribbean opportunities that you might not necessarily see in New York.
We saw a host of companies down in Miami at the Blockchain Shift Conference. One of them was the Crown League. We all had different thoughts. I thought it was kind of cool because it's a professional fantasy football league. But you had some other thoughts on the Crown League.
Right. So look, I'm an outsider to fantasy leagues, but I understand kind of the business dynamics of it. And fantasy leagues were great when you're playing with a group of people that have an ambition to decide how to put together a team. There's usually prize money involved, anyways. So to create a coin around it, like what is the true innovation you're having other than maybe fractional ownership of teams? And an ability to diversify how many teams you have exposure to. But then the question becomes like, how much supply of this can the market really handle or want?
Frank, you don't remind me of a big fantasy guy. What do you think?
I used to play fantasy baseball. I stopped because I didn't like rooting for my fantasy players at odds with my preferred baseball team, the New York Metropolitans. Now, little did I know, New York Metropolitans, they do a fine job losing on their own, irrespective of who was on my fantasy team. But my question with all this, not just this, but all the companies that were at the Blockchain Shift Conference and all the companies that have stepped into the token tank, and remember, I'm the crypto dummy, and I don't have a firm understanding of this at all, is why is this a crypto issue? Like, why are these companies appearing at the Blockchain Shift Conference? What's the nexus between launching these companies with digital currencies or on the blockchain versus just launching them with conventional funding mechanisms?
Well, number one, I guess, everybody's trying to find use cases for the blockchain and cryptocurrency. And I don't think anyone has really gone out there and tried to formulate a professional league with professional teams. And what's different about this is if you only sell a certain amount of coins, and then as the season goes on, those teams play each other, right, with an ultimate champion who wins a big pot of money, then that would incentivize others to maybe want to buy a fractional ownership in that team because next year they may win the money again, so the tokens may appreciate.
And so this is a fantasy league. This is a fantasy league.
Yes.
So if we can launch our own team.
I feel like Hervé Villachez should come running out right now. Welcome to Fantasy Island. The plane.
It's a shame Ricardo Montalban is no longer with us. But so let's say we launch a team, the New York Commuters. I can be a fractional owner of that team,
That's
and if
right.
they win the championship, the fantasy bowl, then I get
paid. That's right.
And I stay with that team next year.
That's right, unless you want to buy a token in another team. So the place where fantasy meets blockchain is that they create this interleague currency that people can say, well, I don't want to own the New York Giants anymore because they're horrible. I'll lose a few bucks and I want to buy a piece of,
move to Jersey.
Cleveland Browns or something like that. So it's kind of on that concept. I thought it was a pretty good idea, and I'm not a big fantasy person, but and our camera guy over here, he's probably got the most insights on this stuff. Hold on, come down here. Let me hold the camera.
Fantasy gambler.
Let me hold the camera for a minute.
What's up?
Yeah. Let me hold. No, go sit in my seat because you seem to be more of an expert than me.
In crypto?
Yeah. Now that we have a true expert, a fantasy expert in his seat, cameraman Rob is going to give us the real breakdown if this is a deal or no deal.
I think it's a no deal because what makes other people not want to make their own coin for the same purpose? Yeah. There's a lot of fantasy leagues that already break it down with their own price points, and I don't see why someone would, because then there'd be like an NFL that's like the real NFL, and then there'd be a fictitious NFL, and then which one do you
Well,
root
also,
for more?
there's no limit to how many fictitious NFLs,
exactly,
right?
so that's the
where's
point.
the supply demand?
And it seems like this focus of this coin is to make one, and really monopolize that fantasy market, and I don't think that's going to
As a millennial crypto buyer, are you interested in investing in the Crown League coin?
I am not. I'm only interested in the top 15 coins.
Very good.
I think eventually all the lackluster ones will fizzle out, and then there will be a top number of ones that you should focus on.
All right, now that you know what you need to know about everything you need to know, we'll tell you what you need to know next on What's the Deal.
Yes, we got cameras.
That's right. Thank you.
Cameras on cameras.
Here's the camera coin. Camera coin.
Hey, welcome back, folks. You're watching What's the Deal on Newsmax, and our continuing coverage from the Blockchain Shift Conference right here in the Wynwood Center in Miami. And we're lucky enough to have the CEO of OneConto, where you can have one account and multiple exchanges, joining us on the Token Tank, Ed Hanshu. Ed, thanks for giving us a few minutes today.
Pleasure to be here.
And phenomenal idea. And I happen to think one of the big problems with the whole crypto craze is the on-ramps and the off-ramps and getting an account open and taking a picture with a photograph, passport and all. Right? By the time you get halfway through it, you're like, honestly, f*** this.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think it's prohibitive to retail investors. And it sounds like you guys have come up with a phenomenal idea. Tell us a little about OneConto.
Yeah, OneConto, one account, multiple exchanges. Instead of doing that process across 5 different accounts, you do it with us, and we give you access and best pricing. So no more getting screwed.
So you guys actually trade for the client, or they open an account and they can enter orders and you just bring them to the market?
Exactly. They open an account, transfer their assets over, place orders, and we route it to the best execution. So it's a traditional broker-dealer aspect. We're currently going through the FINRA process right now for that.
So you guys are like a smart order routing system, like traditional stocks?
Exactly.
And I don't think people really understand that if they just have one exchange and one account, if they come in with any decent size order, that company has no obligation under federal securities laws to give you a best bid or best execution. They rock the thing. In many instances, they get in before their clients, and then they kill the clients, right?
Yes.
And then, from what I've seen, in many instances, they're telling them they're trading for this low commission, but they're killing them on the execution.
Yes, so hidden fees, right?
That's what I'm talking about.
Yes, hidden fees. If you're getting a poor execution, is actually more costly than whatever commission they're going to charge you. So NYDFS actually highlighted a lot of those issues, front running and trading against your client, and not getting the good quality executions, which is why a broker-dealer's involved.
I applaud you for being young entrepreneurs. And what's your website?
www.oneconto.com, #1conto.com.
I think these guys are onto something. You're simplifying the process for people. You guys are ahead of the curve. Eddie Hanshu and the Hanshu crew is here. You're watching What's the Deal on Newsmax TV. You're watching What's the Deal on Newsmax TV. And stepping into the token tank is Nadira Ramatarsingh.
Very good.
Is that good?
Yeah,
Is that good? I was practicing that pronunciation all day. But Nadira, you are the Chief Marketing Officer for Oro.
AutoX, yes.
AutoX.
Yes.
And I hate to tell you, it sounds like a porno site.
Oh,
a little
do you
bit.
think
Yeah,
so?
AutoX.
No, it just means gold in Portuguese, so it's not that dirty.
Okay, good. You're the Chief Marketing Officer for the company, and you guys are focused on building a cryptocurrency exchange.
Exactly. That's one of our products, and that's the product we will start with. So we are launching our exchange within the next 3 weeks. I think by the end of October, we will be live. And we're excited. We will start with the 5 big cryptocurrencies, so Bitcoin, Ethereum, Litecoin, and EOS. And then we will evolve eventually and add like fiat currencies, but also stocks, derivatives, feature swaps. So we want to create one single platform for trading for Latin America.
And what I've noticed over the last 4 or 5 years with blockchain is it seems like to be a lot more opportunity for women. And I love seeing women in major roles and entrepreneurial roles and taking the lead.
Exactly.
For the most part, I think you know this. Women are pretty much better than men at everything.
Men are not gonna like me
Well,
confirming this.
It's
but
true. It's true.
I mean,
if you think about it, you know.
you're saying it.
How did you become the chief marketing officer? What led you to that role?
I've been in marketing for 10 years now, actually. And the CEO approached me. She's been wanting to work with me for her engineering firm as well. And I was like, I'm too busy. You know, I have my own company as well. So eventually, when she presented this opportunity to me, I just couldn't say no.
Wow.
I mean, it's so promising. All these potential partnerships, it just gives us the confirmation that because we've been working so
We're
hard on
onto
this.
something. We're doing it.
Exactly, we're doing this. This is really something.
This
so.
is fantastic. I saw you guys giving your presentation in
Oh, you
there.
were there.
I was in
Oh.
there for a little bit,
Awesome.
in between my segments and in between my Macallans that I've been drinking
Oh,
over here.
you're storing them there.
Well, somebody's got it. Yeah.
see this.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Have a Macallan. What the hell? And I want to thank Macallan, one of our. I want to thank
Sponsors?
Macallan, one of our platinum sponsors, for the rare cask. It's pretty good, the rare
It's
cask.
really good.
Smooth, right?
Yeah.
Nadir, I want to thank you very much for joining us
Oh,
today.
thank you.
I want to wish you the best of luck and any new developments, anything that's happening. We're going to keep in touch, and I want to
Awesome.
report back to our audience all the great success stories. But
Awesome.
God bless you.
Cheers.
And that's all from here.
Bye.
We're out. Welcome back. Continuing coverage of the Blockchain Shift Conference, all the entrepreneurs and startups that were there. And aside from the Crown League, we also ran into the Hanschul brothers. Their company is One Conto, and One Conto is all about opening one account, and they get you through smart order routing to 5 different exchanges and an aggregated best bid and offer for retail.
Look, that I think is interesting. I have accounts with certain exchanges and just remembering all the passwords and more importantly, seeing what the price of each currency is on a lot for a retail investor to take in, and there are a lot of price discrepancies. So to be able to kind of simplify that and so that the retail purchaser gets the best price on Bitcoin on their transfer, I think is really interesting.
For those of you watching at home, you may not realize it. You may trade on one of these alleged exchanges like Coinbase. Securities and Exchange Commission has already put out a warning that Coinbase is not an exchange. It does not extend you the protections of federal securities laws. Like One Conto is a broker-dealer where people are regulated, and they help you, Frank, as a crypto layman.
Yes.
Does it sound like something good to have one account and get access to 5
that's
exchanges?
exactly what I was just going to say. As someone who doesn't know what to make from any of these crypto exchanges, to only have to worry about one, and that would give me access to everything, sounds pretty interesting.
Yeah, on a lot of these exchanges, Neil, they say you're getting this low commission trading. But you're really getting killed on the price you're selling your Bitcoins or Ethers or et cetera at. Right?
You are. I mean, at some points last year and even this year, you saw the price of Bitcoin between one exchange and another be anywhere from 20 to 30% difference. Imagine if you could just make your trades fast enough, you could be making 30% on every trade. And people did do that, and they made money. So if you were sitting there watching your computers and had access to 6 or 7 exchanges, there was good arbitrage opportunities. Those are narrowing with a more number of people flooding in and more of these smart order routing systems. But as a retail investor, you don't have time to have 6 different exchange logins. I think this sort of a tool would be really interesting.
So a smart order routing engine that basically scans all of the different exchanges, and then by you having one account with one password and one login, they're going to go out there and always try to get you the best rate across all markets. So I don't know, Frank, What do you think about it?
I think it sounds interesting. I'd certainly want to know more about it before, not that I have the money to invest, but before investing, I'd want to know a bit more about it.
All right. Well, One Kanto was certainly an interesting one. I know you guys didn't love Crown League, but we're going to end the token team this week with OroX. And one thing I liked about OroX, and we talked about it, you actually did a segment on Women in Blockchain down in Miami, Neelam, but one thing I liked about it is that the chief executive officer and the chief marketing officer were women. And I think blockchain is certainly opening a lot more doors to women in executive positions. What do you think about that?
I mean, look, it's truly a meritocracy where if you have a great idea, there is capital out there that can fund it. And that capital, I think, has less of a gender lens than traditional VC money. So, yeah, I think many women that are contemplating raising money should think about some of the funds that are being launched in the crypto space. This particular company is solving, they're creating a financial services platform for the Caribbean market. Latin American, sorry. And like most emerging markets, there is an issue with currency withdrawal, conversion, exchange, trade for groups that buy and sell in other countries. So if they can find unique solutions to solve those, that's interesting. That said, most people around the world can access the global exchanges. So if you want to move Bitcoin, I think you can do that without a focused regional platform. So.
Most of the time I'm seeing these companies that they have a solution looking for a problem.
Right.
And maybe that is exactly what you're referring to. Hey, well, we have some subject matter expertise or some geographic advantage by being in Latin America or Caribbean. But in a world of decentralization where there are global exchanges, do you really need a specialized Latin American exchange?
So if regulation of these cryptocurrencies becomes greater, not only in America but around the world, is that an exchange that may make more sense once there's more regulations and once these borders become more real for the digital world?
I think that's a good thing to talk about because there was almost everything offshore a few years back. Malta, Gibraltar, Hong Kong. Exchanges were popping up everywhere, but here. Now you have a couple here, but will regulation chase again?
Well, yes, I do think that regulation will dictate the winners in a way because certain existing large players might get shut down. And so there will be room for new guys to come in. Whether that's dictated by geographic boundaries, obviously governments want the tax dollars to stay, and Binance made billions, I think, right? So someone could have made all that tax revenue.
Well, if Binance is anything like Amazon, they probably paid nothing on the billions that they've made.
Yeah.
But,
last time I checked, I think they're now in Malta, so probably not.
Yeah, right, Malta, Gibraltar. I just, as being an old school capital markets guy to some extent, I just have an issue with, centralizing a whole bunch of money and assets in these, smaller domiciles just because they may have more favorable regulation. So I think until there's some federal securities laws where someone could say this is a real exchange in the U.S., I think, retail investors and institutions are going to be hampered trying to deal here.
Yeah, you want protection. You want to make sure that if something goes wrong, there's somebody to speak to on the other line. A lot of these non-regulated exchanges have not done well with dealing with issues. These groups are new companies, new standards, nobody regulating them. They might never return your email if you lost your money.
Yeah, so be very careful at home. Do your homework, educate yourself, make sure these things are suitable for you, and don't invest $1 that you're not willing to lose every last cent of it. So we're breaking it down. We're breaking down all the crypto, the securities tokens, the blockchains every week. And don't forget, if you're an issuer, if you're a company who's thinking about raising some money, if you want some advice, you want to just talk about if your idea qualifies, you want to access capital using the blockchain and cryptocurrency, you reach out to me directly at jt@thetokenteam.com. It'll be right here, jt@thetokenteam.com. Let me know if you want some advice, because us and our team of experts will be right there to help you if we can. You're watching What's the Deal on Newsmax TV, and we'll see you next week.